Retired Major John Spencer, chair of the Urban Warfare Studies at the Madison Policy Forum, joins us now for a little more perspective. Major, I'm fascinated by some of your comments earlier over the past week about how the Ukrainians being able to turn this battle on its head against the Russians perhaps has as much to do with Ukrainian military prowess as it does with Russian incompetency.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen that from day one. No matter what, Russia comes out of this illusion is showing the world that they're not a powerful military. They're not a peer military at all. And they're bleeding both figuratively and literally on the battlefield.
What do you make of how successful the Ukrainians have been in the moral war, if you will, both in terms of giving their soldiers a reason to fight, but also we're now hearing more and more reports of Russian soldiers deserting, of there not being food, of there not being fuel for them, and they're not really buying into the war against Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it at the beginning of that. And if you've ever been in the military, you know soldiers fight for a bunch of reasons. The will to fight. That's what your combat effectiveness is about. Soldiers fight for a cause like freedom and democracy. They fight for their families. They fight for each other. Russian soldiers don't have any of that. They're demoralized. We've gotten that from the high level, like helicopter pilots, down to the 18-year-old draftee. They didn't know where they were going. They don't believe in what they're doing. They're puncturing their own gas tanks. They're parking in the woods. They're in a bad shape. And once a soldier loses their will to fight, I've experienced that, you're dead in the water. The war's over at that point.
Major, they've got that will, and it has been impressive to say the least. And they also have Stingers, Javelins, these Switchblade drones that are headed to assist from the United States. How soon are those munitions put to use?
Immediately, and they're needed immediately. And the only people that can bring it at the speed it needs to is the U.S. So we have to be a key part of not only giving that, but getting it to the border and getting it to these areas like Kyiv, where the doors are going to start getting closed really quickly. That's the goal for, as Leland pointed out on the map, is to isolate forces and isolate the city so they can make the one operation that matters go, which is the actual penetration of Kyiv. Those weapons are so critical.
There is so much speculation about what's in Putin's mind, what he does next, how this all ends. A guest that we have regularly on the broadcast, Major, is a man named Dmitry Alperovitch. He's an expert in cybersecurity, also in foreign policy. And he tweeted recently, and I want to get your reaction to this, the 4 possible ways he believes the war ends. Long-term fight, insurgency, destruction of Ukrainian cities. The second option, Putin declares a limited victory. He gets out. Third would be Zelenskyy compromises on NATO, Crimea. We're starting to see that soften. And then lastly, Putin is replaced. There is a coup, whether it's his oligarchs or someone else. Dmitry said that as of yesterday, he thought that option 3, concessions, were looking more and more likely. At this point in battle, and lots happened in 24 hours, what is on your mind?
Yeah, so in my mind, I don't think any of that happens without an attempt on Kyiv personally, but hopefully so. I mean, the point is not to destroy all the Russian forces, it's to exhaust them militarily and politically. And I think we're getting to that place. And I'm a big fan of Dimitri's and I follow him. But the urban ground is why this is so critical. You know, I talk about fighting. I too believe that, you know, all war is politics by other means. This ends with a diplomatic solution. What is it that Russia is willing to do to save face for Putin to actually leave Ukraine?
Is there anything?
I mean, I think so. I mean, he's not an insane man. He may be evil and he's committing war crimes, but I think he's smart enough to already have a plan B to what could he say, save face, whether that's to take what he's already taken, fight an insurgency there, you just push the line back. I think the agreement that Ukraine won't further seek NATO is a possibility, although I don't agree with it. This is wrong. Russia needs to get out.
Well, and also, it's one thing to end the war, and as we've said for 3 weeks now, it's a whole lot easier to start a war than it is to end a war. The other question is, how do you make sure Putin doesn't do this kind of thing 2, 3, 4 years from now? He certainly did it in Chechnya, Georgia, in Syria. In Syria, he used chemical weapons, and now the Secretary of State says that may be coming. Take a listen.
Again today, we have a strong sense of what Russia could do next. We believe that Moscow may be setting the stage to use a chemical weapon and then falsely blame Ukraine to justify escalating its attacks on the Ukrainian people.
What is the balance between Vladimir Putin's rhetoric and propaganda internally versus externally?
Yeah, that's a tough question, Leland. I mean, of course, all these statements are political posturing to signal to stay out of Ukraine, to the nuclear threat, now the chemical threat. But it's extremely dangerous. We know he's done it in Syria, although I think Syria is not Ukraine. I mean, that strike on the theater with words written around it saying children inside, I haven't seen a more obvious war crime. I think chemical weapons would be the red line. And hopefully we do draw the red line, that if that happens, then all the political lines that are in the sand right now change.
Let me ask you about the war crimes a little bit more, because we heard President Biden call Putin a war criminal yesterday. Blinken said so today. I mean, you would find few who would argue that killing pregnant women and children in a maternity hospital, people standing in line for bread, a building where kids are sheltering in place with kids written on the ground gets blown up, that is not, in fact, happening. But isn't that a big enough consequence, or how significant is that statement, that label right now to do more?
No, I think it's big, and it's a change, right? Before it was he's going to be investigated for war crimes, and I agree with the president. There's no investigation. Those investigations will still happen, The Hague and the ICC, but these are clear war crimes, and wars changed. I can watch a live video cam of Kyiv right now, and we all could see what happened at that theater, right? So what is the mark? What is the atrocity that causes us to do more than we're willing to do today?
Yeah, well, the other question, though, is that does Vladimir Putin and his generals really care? Because Russian justice and what would be done to Vladimir Putin is way worse than anything that's going to happen at the Hague from a war crimes tribunal. Hey, Major, it was good to see you. Major John Spencer, Guard Spencer on Twitter. It's one of the must-follow accounts during this war. We really appreciate you being with us. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.